Welcome everyone to the Investigate Industries and Internships I3 event. Today we're going to be talking about marketing, PR, and advertising. My name is Liz Bañuelos Castro. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm joined right now by my colleague Giselle Jose. She will be moderating the chat as well as the Q&A if you have questions later in the chat. And with that, we'll get started with our panel. So panelists, if you could please introduce yourselves and tell us about your organization. Alyssa, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, sounds great. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. My name is Alyssa Paridze, and I'm a campus recruiter at Media Hub. So what is Media Hub? We are a full-service global media agency. So how I like to describe that is really we're specializing in placing the ads. So there's a heavy focus on analytics, media planning, media buying, really looking into human insights and why people do what they do. So what does all that mean? Essentially, we are working with clients and advising them, how to get campaigns in front of the right audience at the right time, really to, drive high consumer engagement. So with that being said, we like to work with what we call challenger brands. So, those are brands and clients that are innovators in their space, like to try new things. And so we get to work with some really cool companies like JetBlue, Pinterest, Netflix, Lyft, really cool companies across all categories. So really makes the scope of work a lot more interesting. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being here.
Massimo, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. My name is Massimo Lesti. I am the sales recruiting manager for E&J Gallo Winery down here in Southern California. So E&J Gallo Winery, we are the #1 wine supplier in the world. We make over 120 wine and spirits brands. And I hire mostly for our sales positions, especially our sales leadership program, as well as our sales internship. And so essentially, we hire those for our national distributors who are local in every state. So basically we can place you in whichever state you're looking for. I work out of the California, Los Angeles office, so would of course love to find talent local here to stay in the area. But the beauty of Gallo is that we are not just a national, but an international company. So I'm happy to learn a little bit about these other companies and talk to you guys about what we do here as well.
Thanks, Massimo. Sue, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sue Joe. I'm the director of social media here at the Los Angeles Dodgers. I apologize. There's not really a description to go along with our team because we're a baseball team, obviously in LA, 2020 World Champions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being here.
Thank you. And John, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is John Arcady, and I'm a senior manager on the talent acquisition team at Real Chemistry. Real Chemistry is a full-service creative agency that does everything from branding, rebranding, advertising, PR, data analytics for healthcare companies. So pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, health insurance companies, hospital systems, wellness brands, and health tech startups, really anything that falls under the realm of healthcare. And if it has to do with communications, whether visual or otherwise, we do it. And I'm also kind of the head of the internship program and university relations strategy.
Thank you, everyone. Now, we do want to learn more about your industries. Can you tell us what are some of the challenges, but also benefits to working in your industry? Massimo, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, interesting question. So I would say some of the challenges, not so much the wine and spirits, but sales, of course, can be something that I think gives people pause, right? No one wants to be that used car salesman who, maybe is going to fast talk people into a purchase that they don't want to make. Thankfully, we have a really robust training system that really maximizes this idea of consultative salesmanship. And that really means that you are looking to find a solution that is a win-win scenario for both your company, whom you represent, as well as the buyers. So I think that's really helpful. It's also helpful to know that the majority of our distributors nationally place a lot more compensation on hourly as opposed to commission-based payment. So you're not necessarily fighting for your paycheck just with every sale, but you get to be fostered in a much more safe learning environment with a lot of training and being able to have that support from your local management. And then benefits wise, I think the fact that E&J Gallo is, even though it is the largest wine distributor and producer in the world, it's still a family-owned company. We've had 4 generations of Gallo family members leading the way. So you know that the company is going to keep your best interests in mind, rather than maybe chasing those quarterly revenues from the stock price valuation. So that's part of the reason why I was really drawn to the company. And of course, the industry itself is a lot of fun. Even if maybe you're not into wine and spirits per se, it comes with a lot of fun activities, and we like to have a lot of incentive events to go along with it.
Thank you, Massimo. Sue, do you want to go next?
Sure. For us, being a baseball organization, I think some of the challenges that we have, especially in our social media space, and the things that we kind of have to look out for, is that it's not just social media that I have to keep a pulse on, right? We have to make sure that we have an idea of what's going on, not only in social media, but with our fans. How is the fan experience? How is the tone right now with fans? Just a bunch of different things that we have to keep in mind. Also players being traded. What is the sentiment around that? So, those are the things. I wouldn't really say so much of a negative, but it's more of a challenge, right? You can't just think of social media and just clock in 9 to 5 and be done with that. It's kind of thinking about the organization as a whole, and really just having my hands full and just kind of in different departments to kind of make sure everything is able to run smoothly. We're keeping different things in mind. Of course, the way that we ended last year, the season was a lot earlier than we would have liked to. So, there's definitely things that we have to think about when we're approaching the 2023 season. Is it going to be more subdued, or is it going to be, over the top? So these are definitely things that we all have to keep an eye out for. And that's definitely something that we have to constantly monitor as well. So that I would say that part is a little bit of a challenge.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to have to, keep up with all of these changes. And there are a lot of changes often in baseball and sports. John, do you want to follow Sue?
Sure. So in the world of healthcare communications and healthcare PR and healthcare advertising, if someone has an interest in that field, they know that Real Chemistry is the place to be and the place to go. For us, it's as recruiters trying to poach people from agencies and trying to poach them from kind of specializing in one vertical and wanting to come over to healthcare. I think they're a little circumspect about engaging with pharmaceutical brands. I think they think it's going to be some sort of like dope, sick, drug pushing vibes here. And that's not really what we're about. We really are about making healthcare relatable and making kind of bringing back the human element. And so a lot of what we work with as well is truth telling and storytelling. And so for us, it's speaking to patients, speaking to providers, and really getting to the human-centered approach to healthcare marketing and healthcare PR. And so I think it's one of the biggest challenges I face is getting people on the phone from a standpoint of them thinking it's one thing when it really is a lot more. You get a lot more impact. It's a very impactful work we do in the space of healthcare because it touches so many people's lives. And also the fun we're able to have at the same time too, because there's really fun, kind of creative and sexy stuff we do, but in the world of healthcare, which is just always impactful, but not always what you would think in terms of the kind of amount of fun, like I said.
Yeah, demystifying the healthcare and sciences, right? Really important work.
Absolutely.
Alyssa?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of touch upon what Sue had mentioned just in terms of change. And really, I see that as both a challenge and a benefit, working in the media space, technology trends are constantly changing, and it seems like things are just changing even more quickly on a day-to-day basis. So, it is a very fast-paced industry. You need to be flexible, being able to think on your feet and almost be comfortable with change and uncertainty for a little while. But the flip side of that is, makes the scope of work really exciting. You get to try new things, be innovative, be creative. We want to be leaders in the space. And so our company is very open to having, our employees advocate for yourself yourself. And if you have a new idea, bring that to your team, bring that to your manager. If it works, that's great. If not, you kind of learn from that. But really at the company, we're kind of giving that onus and that kind of flexibility to really try new things. If you have a good idea, share that, the leadership team and everyone kind of wants to hear about that. So I would kind of say, that's kind of just the major thing, change. You just never know. It's good, it's bad. Some people are comfortable with that. Some people aren't. But really to kind of work in the media space, it's something you just kind of have to learn with and just kind of grow with and make the most of it.
Yeah, and I really love that positive look on it too, that you do have to keep up with these changes, but that also is the opportunity for new ideas too, right?
Right, exactly, 100%.
Now, in learning more about your industries, what advice would you offer to students interested in a career in your industry? John, do you want to start us off?
Sure. For me, one of the biggest things we look for at Real Chemistry is an interest in healthcare. It's not always a prerequisite that you have to have experience in healthcare. So it's a matter of just being inclined to care about science and life sciences and just the human process of healthcare, I think. That's a big thing. I also think in this day and age with kind of remote work, it comes from a place of like, this is, I guess, getting very granular, but showing however you can demonstrate that you are accountable for the work you're given, the tasks you're given, I think is a great sign to recruiters that you're worthy of a hire. Because not being in the office, there's even less handholding than there is at a standard place where micromanagement is not really a thing. A lot of people will want something called a self-starter, someone who's motivated just by themselves. And so now that we hire from anywhere and you can work from wherever and not necessarily ever meet your manager or ever meet your team, there's an even more importance put on the fact that we need to have those soft skills of someone who's just a go-getter and someone who stays motivated no matter kind of their interactions with their managers.
Thank you, John. Sue, do you want to follow John?
Yeah, I'd say something. We're looking for someone, obviously, that is passionate about what they do, regardless of whether that's sports, whether that's social media. Just someone that's really just passionate and knows what they want out of this career. I think a lot of times people see the very glamorous side to working in social media and with sports and just being around athletes all the time. And while that is part of the benefits of working for an organization, it is a lot of work. Baseball, especially baseball, having 162 games for a regular season and going into postseason, there's certainly a lot of days and things that you're just gonna have to sacrifice on sometimes. And obviously that's much different than a normal 9-to-5 job. So I always say, if you're really passionate about what you do, I feel like, and not burning yourself out, of course, but it just makes that job and being there that much better, right? So for me, as much as I work, I love what I do. I love baseball and love the Dodgers. And so it was really a no-brainer for me. So someone that's obviously very passionate, loves social media, and also just, looking at and just being like creative, right? Someone that is constantly scrolling TikTok and seeing what the new trends are, or being able to project what the new trend could be. So those kind of people are always an asset to have for our team.
Definitely. Thank you, Sue. Alyssa, do you want to follow Sue?
Yeah, sure. And so what I would say is really get exposure to what's out there and try to fine tune your interests and what you're really passionate about. I was a marketing major myself, and I feel like I'm still learning all the different opportunities that are out there in marketing, advertising, media. It's a really big space and there's a lot of really cool opportunities. So definitely take the time to do some research, see what's out there, take advantage of any sort of networking opportunities, internships, job shadowing, mentorship programs. I feel like now there's just even more opportunities available and accessible to a lot of people. And so definitely just take the time to do the research, kind of see what's out there, see what you may be interested in, maybe do a job shadowing or internship. Maybe you do that and realize that's not what you're passionate about. There's so much out there. I think it's just important to kind of get as much experience as you can. So you can really kind of hone in and kind of fine tune exactly what you want to do and maybe where your passion lies.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. It's really important to network, and you can do informational interviews with alums potentially to learn more about the industry you're interested in. And Massimo?
Yeah, so similar to what John said about the medical industry, we don't require you to have any prior knowledge of wine and spirits industry. We don't even necessarily require strict sales experience. The ones that we ask for is in addition to having an interest in learning more about wine and spirits, ideally have an interest in starting your career in sales. So if you have customer service experience or even retail experience, basically just know how to handle different personality types. I think that's really helpful to have going into. And then we also look for leadership. So if you have experience on executive boards of student orgs or volunteer organizations, those really help you stand out, especially if you want to start a career with us in the sales leadership development program, because we want you to go past that initial sales rep role and go into management roles really quickly. And that's a great way to build your career with us. And then finally, I think just having what we call grit, which you could call, being able to overcome adversity. Of course, sales, like any other industry, can have its ups and downs, but of course you have to turn those no's into yeses, and having that ability to be determined and have that grit really makes people stand out from the rest. So I'd say those three are the biggest contenders for us.
Thank you, Massimo. Now, shifting to thinking more about the internships, what qualities do you seek in ideal interns, and what can someone do to stand out for the right reasons on their application? Sue, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think as the social media space kind of grows, we're always looking for someone that can multitask, right? And have multiple skills. And that's not to say, you wouldn't get hired if you didn't have multiple skill set. I think it's beneficial for the team and for you to be able to have a hand in different things. For me, I started off as just kind of a social media person, right? So just handling the accounts, but then as the need for social needed to grow and there was more content opportunities, I eventually kind of learned to pick up a camera and take some photos, right? So it's really helpful to be able to have more than one skill. So whether that's, you just being able to kind of take some TikToks on your phone and know how to edit them, right? Like all these kids that are much younger than all of us are so good at that. And that's something that we recognize and super helpful to the team. Again, it does not have to be an expensive camera or anything like that. It's just whatever you have that are in your possession to be able to do that. So a lot of these kids, they use iPhones and kind of are able to do so many quality things with it that it's really incredible. So whether it's taking photos, whether it's photo editing, whether it's making short IG reels, being able to do different things, it really helps you stand out in terms of what we're looking for. So I think just being able to do a lot of different things, again, being passionate about the sport really helps too, and what you do, because it really makes that much of a difference in the outcome of your work. So just being passionate, loving what you do, being able to have different assets, I think that's really helpful for anybody.
Yeah, that's great, Sue. That comes up a lot in our panels too, that your passion shows, right? And also remember that you all bring strengths to it. So like Sue said, there's a lot of college students right now who are very good at TikTok. And you're bringing that knowledge now to the current workforce. But Alyssa, do you want to follow Sue?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, similar to kind of what some of the other panelists touched upon, when it comes to applying to an internship and even, an entry-level position at Media Hub, we're not looking for any specific hard experience within the space. We're really looking for students that are eager to learn, enthusiastic about the industry, and really just kind of want to get their feet wet and kind of absorb as much information as possible. And so if there are students that do have specific experience, whether taking, marketing courses or being involved in different organizations and clubs, that's kind of always an added bonus and just kind of reemphasizes, your interest and passion for the space. But again, once we, talk to students and potential candidates, you can kind of tell just by talking to someone on their phone if they're excited, if they're eager, if they're really enthusiastic about the opportunity. And I think that really shows. I'd also say, we really look for, different opportunities that show that you learn, strong communication skills, for example. A lot of our work is client facing to some capacity. So, it is important to be able to have a professional conversation, write a professional email. I kind of mentioned before, but it is a fast-paced industry. So being able to juggle multiple responsibilities, think on your feet. And so, a lot of those skills can be learned through different experiences. So maybe you worked as a waitress, or maybe you worked in retail. I think there are a lot of great opportunities that, may not off the bat, think marketing, media, advertising, but that doesn't mean you're not learning important skills that are still transferable.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Alyssa. We always tell our students that your job at Starbucks, you still have transferable skills, right? With customer service,
100%.
organizational skills, you have a lot of transferable skills still.
Yes,
Massimo?
exactly. Don't leave that out.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. Massimo, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. So our internship is interesting because it ends up being more elusive than the actual full-time position. We only hire 6 sales interns per summer in Southern California, whereas we have over 100 sales territories for full-time positions that are constantly rotating through. So I think that gives candidates and students the idea of, wow, I have to go above and beyond to be one of those 6 selected individuals. But really, you know, the secret about internships, at least for us, is that we want our interns to come on as full-time employees as well. So I think, again, the top quality is going to be having that interest in starting your career in our industry specifically, as opposed to joining the internship and kind of seeing it as a stepstone and saying, okay, cool, I have that experience. Now I'm going to apply it to whatever other industry I'm interested in. So for us, yes, we look for leadership. We look for people that have that customer service experience, but ultimately we want people who learn about our company and they say, this is where I want to work for ideally a long time, not just after my internship, but after I graduate, and kind of keep that interest going on past their internship.
Thank you, Massimo. And John, do you want to finish the question?
Sure. I'll kind of echo what Massimo just said, in terms of like the ideal is always to kind of convert interns in September, but that doesn't, I mean, our intern cohort last year was actually 26 rising seniors, 23 graduates. So it's not always the case that we only hire seniors. It's just a matter of it being our target. But even in the case of folks that are rising seniors and going back to school in September, if they have a vested interest in our field, in our vertical, in our industry, then that makes them more engageable, I suppose. Like I would stay in touch with a rising senior that was an intern last summer that went back to school as a way of engaging with that school and keeping in touch and getting on campus and essentially helping me market Real Chemistry. And then it behooves them to stay in touch just because next year or this upcoming May when they're graduating, then those entry-level positions might be theirs for the taking because they've stayed in touch and they've been a huge help and things like that. I think, what can someone do to stand out? I think like I've always appreciated if someone applies to a job or certainly an internship, either one is applicable. The first thing you can do is search on LinkedIn for someone with the title of recruiter at the company you've applied to, and it can be anyone, and let them know you've applied to whatever the title of the position is, whatever the rec number might be. So people have messaged me, and if it's not a rec that I'm working, I will still take that person's name and even their LinkedIn profile, find the recruiter in-house here that is working that rec and say, hey, Heather, Massimo applied and he had the gusto to message me on LinkedIn and tell me that he applied. So he wants eyes on his resume. Would you mind giving him just that? You know, we appreciate that go-gettedness to really land eyes on your resume. And so then we reward that behavior with kind of that ask. And so I think letting someone in the recruitment team know that you've applied is a great step. It always works for the folks that I've recruited. I think I've always said a quantified resume is a more legitimate resume. So if you can use numbers and stats in your bullet points to kind of really speak to the work and results that you've produced. And if you're listing projects from past internships or even capstone stuff from school, explicitly stating your role in a project. If it's on your resume, I think it should be clear what your part in it was. And so never just list like, you know, capstone project, advertising class, like maybe 1 or 2 sentences that speak to what the project was and what your role was. I think those are all good things to see.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's really great advice. And for your resumes as well, we always tell our students to quantify where you can. And I think you had a perfect segue into our next question too, that you've touched on, as well as Alyssa, about networking. Networking is a huge part of the internship search. Do you have any tips or advice for our students? And Alyssa, if you want to take this first.
Yeah, sure. And so think it's really important to utilize the platforms out there. I know specifically LinkedIn, we utilize LinkedIn pretty heavily. Not only are we posting internships and job opportunities, but we're also doing a lot of updates on just what's going on at the company, maybe community service initiatives that are happening, maybe different events, recruiting opportunities. And so definitely take advantage of the tools that are out there, and really don't be afraid to message people, kind of like John mentioned. Even if you're not applying for a job, but maybe there's a specific company you're really interested in and you really just want to learn more about different opportunities at the company, feel free to find a recruiter or maybe someone who has a job title that you're really interested in and just send them a quick note. Maybe they don't respond, but I feel like you'd be surprised how responsive some people can be and just wanting to kind of help and be a resource. So again, don't be afraid to message people, get out there, reach out, connect. I think, connections can go a long way. And the other piece of that too is if you are applying for a job or internship, go through and look at the company and see if you have any mutual or shared connections. And don't be afraid to kind of pull on those and reach out. Again, you'd be surprised, people just kind of want to help. And there's just kind of a lot of great opportunity there.
Thank you, Alyssa. Yes, don't be afraid to message anyone on LinkedIn or Trojan Network. People want to help. They're there to engage with you, to listen. So don't be afraid to cold call anyone. Sue, do you want to follow Alyssa?
Yeah. So I think one of the great things about social media is that you have access to everyone, right? So especially if you want to be in the creative space, and maybe not even the creative space, just any space in general, is that you can pretty much see anybody on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever it is, just kind of where they're working. People are constantly showcasing their work, constantly posting tweets about, we're looking for an intern, we're looking for a graphic designer. Or a lot of those job openings people are posting on their personal accounts. And so I think that's one of the huge benefits to being able to follow some of these places. So let's say, example, you do want to work for the Dodgers. Maybe you want to work for the creative team or you want to work for the sales team. It is worth doing a search kind of online just to do your research and see who works there and maybe follow some of their personal accounts that are big. For me personally, I know there's a lot of people that kind of follow some of our creative team that are constantly looking at the work that we're doing, just whether it's just because they're a fan or because maybe they are interested in joining the field. So I think there's a lot to be said to follow some of those people, really look at their accounts because they do post a certain job openings that are on there that may not be on the website so I think that's really helpful to be able to do that, follow them. Definitely don't feel scared to reach out to some of these people. I think it really says a lot about who you are when you do make the extra effort to do that. And it shows effort. I can't tell you how many times I've read some messages that I've seen that have similar stories to me, that it's that go-getter. It's that I'll do anything it takes to get into that door. So I think there's a lot of benefit in that. Also rely on your recruitment team, or if you don't have one, also look into LinkedIn. Those are huge. If you're still in college, it's beneficial to reach out to alumni, right? There's a lot of people, especially that can help you with that. If you don't know them, somebody else may know who you want to know. So I think really just use all the resources that you can. And again, I think, back in, not to date myself, but back in the days, it wasn't as easy like that. So definitely rely on all the resources that you have. And I think that'll be really helpful for you in the future.
Thank you, Sue. And that's really great advice. Always engage with your employers and companies that you're really passionate about. Sometimes they post the listings on social media, sometimes on LinkedIn, and follow them. And maybe you see a project you really like that you talk about in an interview. Great advice, Sue. Thank you. Massimo, do you want to follow?
Yeah, honestly, I don't have too much to add. I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but I'd say just utilize those resources, especially if you have a specific program or position that you are looking at, such as an internship program. See who those alumni are of that past program. I think LinkedIn, of course, is a great resource for that. And you can ask them, what were your tools for success to landing that internship? What are things that I can do to stand out? And I think that'll give you a pretty clear direction.
Thank you, Massimo. And John?
So I think LinkedIn is a huge one. There's different groups that you can join on LinkedIn, like PRSSA, and there's different things that you can join. And then I think if you're someone who's reading articles on the weekly or the daily in publications that are pertinent to your chosen industry, if you're able to share them along with your opinions and kind of engage in whatever discourse, kind of piggybacking on that, I don't think there's any harm in mass kind of spam adding is what I call it, when you're kind of adding a bunch of folks in your industry, a bunch of folks maybe at a company. Don't be daunted when LinkedIn says like, how do you know this person? I don't think you always have to know them in order to be able to successfully add them. And as long as they're in your network, they'll see what you're posting. And there's been a slew of folks that I'm connected with who post an interesting article, share an interesting angle and interpretation of the article. And then I mean, that's something that speaks to me as someone who's thoughtful and someone who's intentional and someone who's engaging in their industry. And so I think the tool of LinkedIn, in the same way that we all use social media for our the personal ways we use it, can be for sure used obviously in the same vein, just with a professional goal in mind.
Thank you, everyone. You shared really great advice on networking. Now, in shifting more to thinking about the projects that interns work on, what kind of projects do you typically have your interns work on in your organizations? Massimo, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, so our internship specifically is a rotational shadowing internship. So the beauty of that is you're not necessarily being delegated busy work so much as you are there to shadow the different professionals that are stacked throughout the ranks of our sales leadership positions. So you really get to see a day in the life of not just the entry-level role, but also what our general sales managers do, who are fine wine specialists, what their day looks like, what our account execs do. So it's really great for those 8 weeks, really getting a full top-down glimpse of what it's like to work for a wine distributor in the wine and spirits industry. We do have a project that you work on so that at the end of your summer program, you get to present out to a panelist of our directors. So it can be a little nerve-wracking, but it's a really cool way to really make your mark on the company and perhaps even pitch them on an idea that could be seen as something that we actually will want to implement going forward. So even in just a brief 6 to 8 week period, you can leave your mark on a pretty large company, which is a pretty cool way to really make a statement.
Thank you, Massimo. John?
Sure. So our interns work on real hands-on client work. And so you're kind of day-to-day shadowing your manager, but you also have a buddy who's kind of more of a peer, more of a sounding board, almost like a built-in best friend who is typically a past intern or an immediate like entry level, one level above an intern employee. But you work on real client work, you're on client calls, you're encouraged to participate in the client calls if you have an idea. I don't think it's, especially in the age of virtual, you can always ping your manager during a meeting and say, is it all right if I suggest this? Or am I on the right path and thinking that this could be a good talking point? And so you get that encouragement and you're more heavily relied upon than I think you'd think as quote unquote just an intern. We also have an opportunity with Takeda Pharmaceuticals that's a bit more immersive in that you do 4 weeks at Real Chemistry to see the business from the creative agency side with Takeda as a client. And then 4 weeks, Takeda flies the intern to their office in Boston for a 2-day onboarding. And then you do 4 weeks kind of feeling that in-house experience of working on the marketing side, but in-house at a pharmaceutical company. And so I would like to think it's pretty immersive with the standard bells and whistles of a lot of internships where you get the lunch and learns and the weekly programming and that kind of rearing. And then we also just have an overall summer intern project that's kind of like a mock campaign that's then presented to leadership at the end, where the interns really self-govern and manage their own time. And you know, if we have a project management intern, that person is PMing that project and keeping people on task and on time and meeting deadlines and things like that. And then, like I said, at the end, you present to leadership for feedback on how you kind of managed a campaign with little to no oversight, aside from your own education and then your day-to-day experience pulling from that.
Thank you, John. That sounds very hands-on. Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So our internship is really structured into 3 different components. So the first part being is you'd be assigned to a specific team or discipline. So that may be the planning team, maybe the paid social team. And so you'll really get to learn, the ins and outs and day-to-day work that team is tasked with. The second part is just overall learning opportunities. So different diversity events, lunch and learns, workshops, different socials, and really just, getting to know all of the ins and outs of all the different departments that are available at a media industry. And then the third part is the project component. So you'd be put in a group probably with around 6 to 8 different interns, and you'd really be tasked with solving a client ask. And that is a real problem for one of our clients, which is really exciting. It doesn't get more real life than that. So then you'll get to work as a team to kind of figure out the solution. You'll also have coaches from the company that can help guide you. But really by the end of the internship program, you'll be able to pitch the proposal and get live feedback. So it's a great opportunity to kind of just get fully immersed in the company, what it's like to work at a media agency, then also get some, real life skills back. And, this is something that you can add to your resume, and just kind of, showcase, kind of like some of the other panelists mentioned too, we're really focused on finding interns that can then become full-time employees. So, it's just a great learning opportunity. And I'll note too that it is primarily virtual, but we are hoping to have interns that are in specific markets near our office locations to also kind of have some of that exposure to kind of seeing what the office environment would look like and kind of having some of that team collaboration as well.
That sounds amazing. Thank you, Alyssa. And Sue?
For us, the first step would be to have them shadow me and just the rest of our social team, just to kind of see what we do on a game day. It's very much different than what it is on an off-season day. So we would have this person shadow what we do from start to finish. We get in around 11 a.m., 10 to 11 a.m., and we kind of leave the stadium around midnight. And so we would definitely just have them see what we do in terms of when do we start building the lineup out? When do we start tweeting that out? When do we start covering batting practice? When do we start covering the pregame ceremony? So it's a lot of kind of watching at first, and then slowly we would have them kind of do what we end up doing. So we would start them off with having them in charge of the lineup, getting the graphics ready, and that sort. And then eventually going down to cover different events, pregame ceremonies, players, and a lot of different things that we do. We kind of just throw them in there. And that's, I feel like sometimes that's kind of the best way that you learn, is that you just kind of in the scenarios and the situations and see what sticks. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little bit different from all of the other panelists in that sense, but we're very much in person and just kind of all around in the action.
Thank you, Sue. All of your internships sound amazing, very hands-on, like a great learning experience. We had a question that I think would be applicable to more students than just the one. But do you feel that you have to be a marketing, advertising, or PR major to work in your industry, or can you be any major? And the question goes for all of you. Alyssa, if you want to start.
Yeah, so I would say, nope, we're open to all majors. Obviously if you are, majoring in marketing, advertising, business, whatever it may be, communications, obviously, that can be just an added benefit that kind of just, reaffirms your interest in the space. But that being said, we've hired plenty of students that are maybe psychology or English majors who maybe went to school for a specific field, but then along the way had different internships and were involved in different organizations and kind of realized that, maybe they're looking for a different career path. So don't be afraid, if you're majoring in one thing that you can't apply to these opportunities. Because at least, for our company, we're open to all majors.
Thank you. And Sue, I believe you answered the question in the chat, but you can answer it for everyone as well.
Yeah, just kind of to echo Alyssa, I mean, I don't think a specific degree is going to stop you from, or should stop you from any job that you apply to. I'll tell you, my background was broadcast journalism, because back in the day, there really wasn't a social media coordinator position out there, but slowly that grew into social media and I made the transition. So that's not to say you can only do the job that you have a degree for. If you have a photography degree, you can certainly apply for social media. If you have an analytics degree, certainly join our team, because social analytics are huge for us. It's a lot of reporting. It's a lot of seeing what's working, what's not. So I would say just apply to any and anything that is interesting to you. And you can always use that degree and in a different way that you maybe didn't think of. So for example, if you have a PR degree, but maybe are interested in social media, that also works, because PR means what? Like you can work with players, you can work with media that's around. So you can definitely use any of these degrees that you have to your advantage. It's just a matter of what you really want to be doing. like you can't, we can't have a journalism background, but if you want to be, a biochemist, like it just doesn't work that way, but there's definitely things that you can do.
Thank you, Sue. Very well put. John, I saw you unmute.
Oh, I mean, I think I kind of answered in the chat, but we also, I mean, we believe kind of in diversity of thought and transferable skills. And so I think for us, it's about if it comes across you have an interest in healthcare and certainly an interest in making an impact, there's transferable skills everywhere and we're able to find that. So apply as you wish.
Thank you. And Massimo?
Yeah, pretty much same thing as the rest of the panel. Interest in the industry and your experience is going to take far more precedent over any major that you have. So as long as you are willing to learn, then we're happy to have you.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, and I think everyone put it very well. It's more about your interests, how you frame your skills. If you're very passionate about something, go for it, right? And actually, this is a very good segue into our next question. A mix of hard skills and soft skills are needed in every industry. What are some of the hard and soft skills that students should work on to thrive in your industry? Sue, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, in our industry particularly, I think it's a lot of kind of what I've touched on before, just also just being, a go-getter, really hardworking, but also being able to have some of these skills that, whether it's photo editing skills, being able to work a camera, knowing social analytics, just a lot of very different things that really are beneficial to the social team and the organization. I can't tell you how many times we talk about analytics in our department, right? So having a lot of different skill sets are going to be really huge, especially in our industry and business.
Thank you, Sue. Massimo?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, the sales industry is a very soft skills heavy industry. So we put a lot of focus on not just sales personality, but also your leadership capabilities. I talked about grit and determination and communication skills. Really all of that is what's going to set you up for success, and just having a good work ethic. Organization is one of those that kind of bleeds into hard skills, because how do you stay organized? Maybe you use a virtual calendar, maybe you use a customer relations management software, which we have in-house to manage all of our accounts. So in terms of hard skills, it's probably a little bit less than something that's a more STEM or technical related industry, but at least having those basic computer skills to be able to write professional emails, to be able to record account calls. Those are things that I think are pretty intuitive, but are ones that if you can show off are always going to be a plus. But at the end of the day, it's those soft skills that I think are really going to put you over the finish line.
Thank you, Massimo. Alyssa?
Yep. So I'm going to echo what Massimo just said. And, we really place an emphasis on the soft skills. And so having a strong attention to detail, strong organizational skills, someone who's motivated, professional, strong communication skills, being able to prioritize, multitask. For example, you might be working with multiple clients or maybe one client in a portfolio of brands. So it's really important to kind of differentiate those different lines of work and, stay organized, stay on top of things, being able to work both independently and as a team. We do work in a hybrid environment at the company. So, there are times where you have to work independently, but also a lot of the work is very collaborative. Most likely you're working on a media planning team and working with different clients. So just being able to work with different team members, being able to think on your feet, be adaptable. I think all of those kind of soft skills we really place a heavy emphasis on.
Thank you, Alyssa. And John?
Sure. It's kind of funny. I was on a panel the other day and we talked about how in a post-COVID world, I hadn't seen this much because I simply, screen the candidates initially and then hand them off to the next few rounds of interviews. But when there has been some concerns just about kind of new professionals' soft skills. And I think like in an environment like ours, we can teach hard skills, and there's certain ones, like I echo everything that the panel has said, and attention to detail can't always be taught, but certain ways to stay organized can be. I think the soft skills that you acquire just through day-to-day office interactions over time are invaluable, and they are kind of going extinct only because of how remote we are and how important it is for organizations to have that flexibility and to offer that to people. So like folks are graduating from school saying they want the ability to be remote and have that flexibility. I think what they're not understanding that they could lose if they I don't want to say like if they abuse that benefit of being remote is that interoffice knowledge sharing that you just get from experience, from just learning how to conduct yourself in a meeting and things like that. And so I would advocate for I mean, this sounds rather juvenile, but I would probably do it if I was I would ask my parents, you know, when the panel talked about soft skills in an office, what does that mean? Like, what did it used to be like? Because we're getting back to a place where people will be back in an office again. But like I said, a lot of employers are keeping it flexible. Our company is not mandated to be back in an office anytime soon. So our interns don't have to be within a commutable distance. And to that end, some of them may miss out on that learned experience of like being on site. And so I would pick the brains of folks who were in professional environments pre-COVID, just to kind of say, what was that like? And what skills have you shirked? And what skills do you hope that folks my age and this younger generation learn, and kind of educate yourselves on those soft skills?
Thank you, John. And you can definitely always practice those soft skills with your peers, with your friends and family, and LinkedIn Learning. And
Yep.
there's a lot of ways you can still build on them. Now, as we wrap up the panel, there's one more question I have for each of you. What is one takeaway that you want our students to know before the end of the panel about your industry or your internships? And whoever wants to start can jump in.
I will say this. So something that comes up in interviews, both for full-time as well as internships, is I'll kind of start off by essentially saying, tell me a little bit about yourself. If a candidate says, do you mean professionally or personally? It's a red flag to me, because in an ideal situation, your personal goals and personal passions are interwoven into your chosen career path. I think a lot of people freak out when they maybe accidentally or intentionally make a career pivot, but I've always said that a flexible, ever-changing career path is by no means a flawed one, as long as you're remaining true to what brings you joy. I know it sounds corny, but it's very true. And in my older age, I've really learned that what I need to be doing to keep me engaged and happy is stuff that kind of sings to my soul, so to speak. I don't really talk like this in my day-to-day, I promise. But I just think it's important to be said that no matter what you're doing, I think in selling yourself in the interview stage, it's about selling the fact that you're impassioned about what you're hoping to do for this company, that it speaks to you on a personal level, that it somehow tugs at you to keep you engaged on your own, so that you need little to no micromanagement, things like that. So I think it's always about making sure that whatever you're pursuing career-wise speaks to your personal desires. And I think that will only benefit you as well as the company in the long run.
Thank you, John. And that's really great advice. Your passion really shows in interviews and your applications. Does anyone want to follow, John?
I'll go. Just to kind of piggyback off of that with John, and I've talked about this kind of throughout this whole panel today, but for me particularly, I think passion is such a huge thing, and it's so important. And like I said, it truly shows when you're talking to somebody. I can immediately tell within the first few minutes of talking to somebody if they're truly passionate about this job and passionate about what they want to do for this organization and what they want to be doing, versus someone that is applying just to apply and because it seems like a cool place to work. And you can immediately tell that. And so for me, that's always the first thing that I listen to. And it may be weird, but I definitely can tell in the first few minutes. And so I think definitely apply to jobs that you are very passionate about, because it does show, it shows through in interviews. And so I think when you're passionate, here's what I'll say is that I can look at somebody's resume who may not have, as much experience, but versus someone that has a ton of experience but has no passion. I'm always going to go with the person that has passion and less experience, because you can use that passion. You can always teach them the things. But if you have someone that is just there and doesn't really want to, they're not open to learning. And so for me, I'm always going to choose the other, the less experienced person, if they have that passion. And I think that's huge for me. So yeah, that's just something I look for.
Thank you, Sue. Alyssa or Massimo?
Yeah, I can go. So I'd say definitely making sure you're advocating for yourself and putting your best foot forward. So, if you are applying for an opportunity, making sure you're following up. If you get an interview, making sure you're preparing. I think taking those extra steps goes a long way. It is competitive out there. And for some of these opportunities, there's only a limited number of spots. And so I think you can't just, submit an application and hope all goes well. It kind of makes it more beneficial for you to kind of take those extra steps, follow up with people, stay connected, network, and you'd be surprised how beneficial that can be.
Thank you, Alyssa. And Massimo?
Yeah, I think the panelists covered really well, just kind of best practice advice in terms of applying to internships and full-time positions in general. One other thing that I would say, maybe just to balance it out, because I know we're talking a lot about passion and interest in industries, but also, really think about what is going to be the best for you, both in terms of building your career as well as maybe even economic stability. I think a lot of us see some of the layoffs that are happening in different industries around us and might give you some pause as you are coming out of your university experience thinking, I want to start in a place that I feel that I'm safe to grow in and really start my career. So something to take into account. And I know you wanted us to talk a little bit about maybe the industry itself. One thing, maybe it's overly pragmatic, but at least I can always say the wine and spirits industry, whether it's in good economic times or downturn times, we always have a good base of business to work off of. So that's something that has made me feel more secure as I've, continued to develop my career in the face of COVID, in the face of economic downturns, supply shortages, all that. So I always say it's good to have that balance of both. Find a place you're passionate about, but also find a place that you can feel comforted and nurtured to continue to grow.
Thank you, Massimo. And thank you to our panelists. You were great. You shared a lot of insight into your industries and your internships. Our students have a lot of new knowledge now, thanks to you all. This has been such a great panel. And before I bring it to a close, I want to remind our students that we do have Career Fest going on right now. I put the link in the chat if you want to check out our other events, as well as the rest of our I3 panels tomorrow. And as always, you can come and find us in STU 110 for drop-ins or appointments. We have drop-ins 1 through 4 every day in person and online. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to our panelists who are so amazing.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.